planning, funding, and policy more understandable and accountable. Our workshops can take place in diverse locations around the state so that commissioners and staff can hear directly from our stakeholders around California. The workshop agenda is located on our website at www.catc.ca.gov. Live closed captioning is available on this webinar. Please select the Show Captions tab at the bottom of your screen. There are a number of language options available there to choose from. Any document the CTC creates can be translated into any language you need. Simply email us at ctc@catc.ca.gov and we will have them returned to you as quickly as possible. For all of our workshops, we encourage interaction with our stakeholders. There will be opportunities for questions and comments throughout this workshop. We will stop periodically throughout this workshop to address stakeholder questions. You should see the webinar control panel likely located on the bottom of your screen. There, you will find the Raise Hand and Q&A tabs. We encourage you to use the Raise Hand feature as soon as we reach the item to give the system time to acknowledge you. Commission staff will let you know when it is your turn to make your comment. Once you have been unmuted, please make sure to state your name and agency you are representing. Alternatively, you may use the Q&A tab to submit your comment or question. Commission staff will read that on your behalf. As a reminder, each registered attendee is provided a unique link or phone number to access the webinar. These should not be shared with other participants, as this can create confusion for staff when making comments. Please do your best to be concise. Please make sure your comments add new information. If you agree with the comments of a previous speaker, simply make that statement. If you face any technical issues, please reach out through the chat or Q&A tab, and I will do my best to assist you. Thank you all for joining today. I just quickly wanted to go over a few of our workshop principles. Please be respectful of other viewpoints. Please propose your ideas in a public setting so we can discuss them together. And please keep a statewide perspective. Remember, the program serves a large variety of applicants. I will now turn it over to Anya to go over today's agenda.
Okay, so today we will start with the workshop recap from our last workshop, which was on December 10th, 2025. And then we will introduce the plan for our branch workshops. And then we're going to close out all of the guidelines updates, starting with concluding the project savings discussion. We started that discussion at our November 19th workshop, and we had further discussion on during our December 10th workshop. So we're going to close that out today. And then we're going to close out with the 2027 ATP application questions and updates to those. And then we'll have action items. And yeah, that is the plan for today. And Jaden, I'll pass it to you for the next few slides.
Thank you, Anya. All right, so now I will go over a recap of the December 10th workshop. So at the last ATP Central workshop, we discussed a variety of topics, including the 2027 ATP applications, where we discussed the Part B narrative questions for infrastructure and combination applications. We also had a presentation by Dr. Griswold, who is the director of UC Berkeley's Safe Transportation Research and Education Center, where she covered updates to the count methodology guidance. We asked for feedback on the guidance, and the comment period closed on January 9th. We also discussed a new section of the guidelines, which is Part 8, Project Delivery, as well as Appendix C, which we deleted from the guidelines. Furthermore, we discussed various sections where we clarified and simplified language. Lastly, we continued our discussion on the stakeholder suggestion pertaining a mid-cycle fund estimate. All right, and next I will go over the Cycle 8 branch workshop information. So our branch workshops are an opportunity to provide technical assistance to our stakeholders. At our branch workshops, we'll provide an overview of the ATP, as well as provide advice for addressing each application question based on the scoring rubrics. I want to emphasize that there will be no decisions regarding changes to the 2027 guidelines, scoring rubrics, or applications at these branch workshops. We will also be providing site visits to agencies directly after workshops to address project-specific questions. In Cycle 8, we will be providing 3 regional virtual branch workshops. On February 9th, we will host a branch workshop for the Northern California region, which includes agencies that fall within Caltrans Districts 1, 2, 3, and 4. On February 23rd, we'll host a branch workshop for the Central California region, which includes agencies that fall within Caltrans Districts 5, 6, 9, and 10. And on February 25th, we will host a branch workshop for the Southern California regions, which includes agencies that fall within Caltrans Districts 7, 8, 11, and 12. Each branch workshop will be informal and interactive with attendees. We plan for approximately 2 hours where CTC staff will present ATP basics, walk through each application question with time for a Q&A session. Following the conclusion of the branch workshops, we will begin our virtual site visits, which can be half an hour to an hour, depending on what the agency requests. The branch workshops are open to anyone who is interested in attending. A registration link will be included in this presentation and will also be available on our CTC website. Please register with the proper regional district for your agency. We did ask for branch workshop requests, so agencies who registered for a branch workshop will receive an analysis conducted by CTC ATP staff, which goes over the agency's previous submittals in the ATP. This analysis will be distributed privately to the agency. To schedule a region-specific site visit, please reach out to me via email. You can find my email listed in this presentation, as well as on the CTC's website. Again, you will be able to find the registration links for your regional branch workshop included in this presentation and our CTC website, which will be made available shortly. Please note which Caltrans district your region falls under. If your agency has scheduling conflicts with these branch workshops, please send me an email by January 22nd, and we will do our best to accommodate your agency. I will now turn over to Anya to go over the continued discussions pertaining to the 2027 ATP guidelines.
Thanks, Jaden. And I want to pause here quickly to see if there's any questions. I didn't see any in the question and answer tab, but okay, we do have a raised hand.
Yeah, Shauna, go ahead.
Thank you. This is Shauna Gause with the Sonoma County Transportation and Climate Authority. As you mentioned the regional workshops, and we appreciate that very much. I'm just trying to make sure I understand that the workshops themselves will be virtual and that you will be providing a analysis to all of the folks that had requested a branch workshop. Is that right? Do I have that right, or could you go over it again?
Yes. Yeah, no, that's correct. And yeah, so this cycle we had to make the decision to offer only the virtual site visits just because of our staffing and the availability for travel was more limited than it has been in past cycles. So we're hoping that we will still get the same kind of engagement and that the agencies that attend will, still have value added from the workshops and then also from the site visits that we'll be scheduling for the rest of the day.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
We had someone enter into the Q&A to go back to the previous slide. So thank you, Jaden, for moving back. I'm not seeing any other hands raised or comments come in.
Okay. If anybody thinks of questions about the branch workshop later on, we can always address those then. But let's go ahead and move forward. Okay, so I wanted to kind of close out this discussion item. For those of you who were not able to attend or listen to the recordings of the November or December workshops, just kind of a quick recap of this discussion. So there was a stakeholder who had suggested a new process for redistributing project cost savings, and we had kind of in November and December workshopped some ideas of how to address this. And we between the December 10th workshop and today, we had a chance to kind of have some further discussions internally. And so you can see kind of on the slide what CTC staff is proposing. Basically, it's that we continue with cycle 8 without any changes rather from the current process, which is to say that things will kind of move forward as they have in previous cycles, so there would be no change. And then in cycle 9, we will, have had more time, obviously, and we'll be able to propose some updates on how recovered funds are redistributed back into the ATP program. And then, we will work with the ATP TAC, the Technical Advisory Committee, as well as with you all, with our stakeholders during the Cycle 9 engagement process. So that is kind of the update. I those of you who were at the December 10th workshop, I think I promised that we would have a conclusion on this today. So here it is. I will pause here and see if there's any questions or comments, any feedback.
We have a hand raised. Carl, go ahead.
Hey, Alika. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you, Anya. I want to say thank you for thinking through the updates to this potential change, and supportive of revisiting the conversation in cycle 9.
Great, thank you. Any other? Go ahead, sorry.
So we got a comment from Claire asking, what is the magnitude of previous cycle cost savings?
Yeah, that's a great question, Claire. So in previous cycles, meaning cycles 1 through 7, right? So as you all know, we programmed quite a bit of funds, between cycles 1 through 7. So because we just recently in the last couple of cycles started to actively introduce savings back into the program, the magnitude was quite a bit, probably more than, because it was not just from 1 or 2 cycles, but it was from cycles, well, I should say 1 through 7. I mean, not that we really saw savings or lapses or canceled projects in cycles 6 and 7, but yeah. So anyway, what we are doing, the current process, is that we are adding the savings to, excuse me, the cycle 8 fund estimate. So it will actually increase the pot that will be distributed between the 50% to statewide, 10% to small urban and rural, and 40% to the MPO components. This is just a draft, but at this point it's about $25 million. That, yeah, in terms of cost savings that are going to be redistributed in cycle 8. Does that answer the question, Claire? Okay, excellent. She says yes in the chat, so okay. Any other questions or comments on this?
Not seeing any other hands raised or questions come in.
Okay, great, thank you. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so the next few slides are going to close out our discussion on the 2027 ATP guidelines. I'll just say generally, so we will be, we as in CTC staff will be presenting the draft 2027 ATP guidelines to our commissioners at the January commission meeting. The January commission meeting is going to be held Thursday, January 29th and Friday, January 30th. And if you're interested in attending, we do have the registration links on the CTC website. And you can either attend in person or listen in virtually. The in-person site will be in Roseville, California. And then, of course, the virtual links are available on our website. We will be posting the documents for the January commission meeting this Friday, January 16th. So you will be able to see the draft guidelines that are being presented to our commissioners once they post on Friday. So I just wanted to start this off with that. This has, been a really great process, and I just want to thank everybody for your input and everything on these guidelines. So with that, let's go through the last few changes or updates. Thank you, Jaden. So this first update is an addition rather under the amendment requests. So this section includes the information on how to do a scope change, or how to submit a scope change rather, how to submit a funding distribution request, and how to submit a request for segmenting your project. So those are the types of amendments that are allowed in the ATP. And we did always have a reference that we state very clearly that the ATP does not fund cost increases except for projects that are nominated and implemented by Caltrans. So basically, Caltrans implemented projects or on-system projects. So because there was never a process or any further information than just that sentence in the guidelines, we wanted to expand a little bit on some of the expectations. And that's what this subsection is doing. So this language is not in track changes on this slide because it's all new language. So again, this is not a new policy. This is a policy that has existed in the guidelines for several cycles now. All we're doing here is adding more information. So I'll just outline a couple of the items that are included in this write-up. So basically any approvals of the cost increase requests will be funded either first with available savings or from the subsequent program cycle. That is obviously the only funds that are available to ATP. The funding would be adjusted accordingly from the component in which the project is programmed. The expectations are that if a project is either jointly nominated by Caltrans and a local agency or by a local agency, then the commission expects that the local agency would be responsible for cost increases because that would then fall under because it would not have been a Caltrans nominated project. And then for projects that are programmed in the MPO component, the commission expectation is that there be collaboration and partnership between Caltrans and the MPO that put the project forward, that requested the programming of the project to kind of make sure that every option is explored before we come to the ATP. So this is the proposed addition. It's basically just to set some additional parameters to these requests. There's no change in how the ATP views the funding of cost increases. We have not to date funded any requests from Caltrans for supplemental funds requests. We've always worked with them to find other solutions, and that's really still the ideal for us. So, but because it is allowed, we wanted to kind of set these additional parameters. So any questions or comments on this?
We have one hand raised. Emmanuel, go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Emmanuel Martinez with Coachella Valley Association of Governments. I have a question related to, not directly related, but somewhat tangential. If we have a project that's funded by another funding source and it includes an active transportation component, but the costs have gone up, can we apply for ATP for that cost difference increase?
I'm not sure I'm 100% understanding. So you're saying it's not a project currently funded through the ATP?
Correct. It's not funded by ATP. We have the LTCAP funded a portion of the project that includes the active transportation, but costs have been going up. Could we possibly apply to the ATP program to fund the ATP component due to cost increases? We're not supplanting.
I'm gonna say the answer is no at this point. I think we've had similar situations with other projects that are funded by other commission programs that have requested funds for a cost increase from one program or another. And I think typically we've not allowed that. But we can maybe continue the conversation offline, but I think initially I would tend to say that would not be allowed.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Sure.
We received a question asking, Hector is asking, did the cap for small projects increase? If not, should it? If not, it should, because in rural areas, especially in Northern California, it's easy to exceed that cap for a small project. Once it's a medium project, small agencies will most likely not be able to leverage funds, which will put them at a disadvantage compared to larger agencies. Anya, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you for the comment, Hector. So the cap for the small projects did not increase. And I would say maybe we can table this discussion for changing the cap for the cycle 9 workshops. And I'm saying that because it's pretty late in the process. And I think that this would be a larger discussion. We would maybe dedicate a workshop and, maybe discussions in a couple workshops to this topic. I know this is something that's come up in past cycles, and I think there's been some lively discussion around this topic. So, we will make a note to bring this up in our kickoff workshop for cycle 9 as something that was brought up here.
Hector said thank you.
Okay.
Other than that, I'm not seeing any other hands raised or comments come in.
Okay, perfect. Let's go to the next one then. Okay, so the next section that we made some edits to is the reporting section, which in the 2025 guidelines was called the program evaluation section. So we kind of changed the title of the section to reporting because it not only discusses reporting surrounding the program evaluation, but also like individual project reporting requirements are covered in this section as well. So we're basically just consolidating all of the sections that have to do with any kind of reporting, whether it be for program evaluation or individual projects, and kind of consolidating it all under this section. This part on the right-hand side of the slide that's titled consequences, these are not new. These were included in the 2025 guidelines as well. They were just kind of moved to the top because they do apply to the failure to report, like on any type of project reporting, whether that be reporting on counts or your quarterly reports. So let's go to the next slide. So, some of you may remember that the commission did adopt a policy on user counts, kind of outside of the guidelines. And that was really because we were having a really hard time collecting counts from agencies whose projects were awarded ATP funds. So basically what this section is doing is just taking that policy for user counts that the commission had adopted and putting them in the guidelines, so that they're just easier to reference, honestly. And agencies aren't having to remember to look at a separate adoption of a policy. So that's what this section is doing. It is updated, as you heard Jaden say in our last workshop. We had a presentation about the update for the count methodology guide. And so the policy on user counts is updated to reflect the requirements that are in this now final count guide. So that is it for this section, I believe. I will stop here for comments or questions.
Not seeing any hands raised or, oh, actually, we just got a few. We have a question from Sheila asking, where can we find a copy of the count guide?
Yeah, that's a great question. So so there is a link in the guidelines. Alika, I'm not remembering right now. Is it on our website, or do agencies need to go to the Caltrans? Okay, can you maybe cover this? Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So I can include a link as well in the chat, and I see Allie Doer Westbrook has her hand raised, but it's included on the Commission's ATP website under the Resources tab. And Allie, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Alika. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, so I'll probably just end up repeating a little bit what you said. So after the presentation that was done at the December 10th workshop, Commission staff did post the draft guidelines, and we had those available for review and comment till January 9th. So we were collecting feedback both from folks that participated in the workshops, and then also we've had several conversations with our ATP TAC members as well. So right now, our team at the ATRC is working to review and incorporate those outstanding comments from that we received. So we don't have a final version yet published externally, but you are still able to look at the draft. So the comment deadline did close for that review, however, and we want to get these finalized as soon as possible. So I guess I'll just say if there's any like glaring issues that any of you see, you can send us an email. We've been using an online comment form that I believe is also linked, but we've pretty much concluded our comment period. We had it open for several weeks, and we really need to finalize this because the grant guidelines are going to be adopted, and want to make sure that you all have that information when putting together your applications.
Thank you, Allie. Sheila says thank you. We have another comment from Julio asking, can construction completion be made more clear? Is it when the final bit of construction material is put in the ground? Is it when the contract is completed, or when a notice of completion is filed or when the project is made open to the public.
Yeah, thank you, Julio. That's a really great point. Depending on how you're looking at it, it can mean different things. So I will go ahead and make that update to that sentence to make it more clear. And Ali, did you have a clarification on what was meant by that? Oh, okay.
I did not. Sorry, forgot to lower my
Okay.
hand.
Okay, no worries, no worries. Yeah, thank you for that. I'll go ahead and make that update to make it more clear. It's a good point.
And then we got another question. Julio says, much appreciated. We have another question from Susan asking, will the workshop slides also be available on the website with the recording? And the answer to that is yes. All of our workshop slides and recordings along with the agenda and action items are posted on the Commission's website under the Cycle 8 tab.
And I will go ahead and also update this slide with a link to the count guide so that once this PowerPoint posts, you'll have access to that through this PowerPoint, but it's also available in the places that Alika and Ali were saying. Okay. Any other questions on this? Okay, we have one more.
Yep, we have one from Kyle asking, can you confirm that ATP funds be used for data collection? If they are, how should agencies use the ATP funds for the final data collection if the required 5 years post-construction? Comment, 7 continuous days of data collection and a steep project budget impact from the previous count requirements.
Yeah, so you are allowed to include the data collection in your engineer's estimate that's included with your ATP application. For the second part of your question, I'm going to see if we have one of our headquarters ATP. Oh, Teresa has her hand raised. Okay, thank you, Teresa, for addressing the second part.
I'm not sure we have figured out how to do the 5-year part. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so for sure. So what we've done with Cycle 8 with the engineer's estimate is we have put line items in there so you won't forget it. And that's 2 lines for the infrastructure and non-infrastructure pre-construction count and 2 lines for the post-construction count. But we have not yet figured out how to give you the 5-year construction count reimbursement. And we will work on that moving forward. But yeah, so as far as that, this kind of circles back to this construction completion question, because part of the definition of construction completion is when all work is done. And for ATP, all work is not done until you've done your post-construction counts. So people need to kind of start wrapping their brain around that definition versus the open to the public, so that you can get reimbursed for the 7 days post construction. So that needs to get into people's minds. But yeah, we have not quite figured out how to get reimbursement for the 5-year requirement.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that, Teresa. You're kind of jogging my memory. So, yeah, Kyle, I think at this point in your application, you would include, you know, the counts for up to the, you know, when the project is open to the public, and then or CCA, and then we'll have to get back to everybody on what the 5-year post-construction counts what that should look like in your engineer's estimate. So to be determined, I guess. We'll have to get back to everyone on that. And Claire, oh, we have a couple
Yep.
raised hands.
Yeah, Claire, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to put in a vote to either have the completion be when the notice of completion is filed with your jurisdiction or when the final report is put in CalSmart. I think those would be good dates that are definitive and lack ambiguity.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you, Claire.
We also have a comment from Maria stating, will a CPI be considered for payment of the 5-year count?
Can you maybe expand on what CPI stands for? I don't know if I'm familiar with that.
Maria, maybe I can unmute you. I know you initially had your hand raised. Give me 1 second. Okay, there you go.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So by that means that, there's cost increases as the years go by. So a cost estimate to do a 5-year count, obviously we can give you a cost now, but that will be based on today's dollars. It's not necessarily going to be in 5 years from now dollars. So would that be taken into consideration when you guys figured out the way to get reimbursed for the 5-year count?
Yeah, so that's a great point for us to consider as we're looking at this. Yeah, okay, we'll make a note to make sure we touch on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Teresa, did you want to add to that? You're unmuted. You just have to unmute yourself.
Okay. Maybe we'll move on. Teresa, did you have your hand raised, or was that an error?
I was talking. Did no one hear me?
Wait, you were muted, so we didn't hear you.
Oh, I'm
Maybe you
sorry.
can repeat.
I will repeat. Okay, so it's up to each applicant when they're filling out the engineer's estimate to determine how much they're going to allow for cost increases. So you do want to figure out, if you're asking for con the day after projects are selected, then you're talking about now dollars. But if you are asking, if you're going to be going through all of the phases, and so it's going to be 4 or 5 years, you need to calculate that in. And we can't tell anyone what that number is. Everybody else's, the cost increases are different all across the state. But again, we have not figured out how to do the 5-year part for the count post. So that's maybe 10 years by the time we get done and you get done with your construction and wait on. So yes, we have not figured that part out, but definitely it is on you to figure out how much costs are increasing in your area as you're working on your application. And you need to consider that, and we won't ding you. That's completely normal practice. So that's nothing to worry about. So that's what I have.
Okay, thank you, Teresa. I think that's really helpful.
And Maria responded saying, understood, we will account for the cost increases. Thank you.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
excellent.
Not seeing anything else come in.
Okay, great. Well, let's move to the next slide, which I believe is just showing you the parts that were taken out, which is basically just the old information about the interim count guidance. And as we were just discussing, we're updating that so to be finalized. And so the previous slide has the updated information. All right, so next slide. Okay, so the last section that I wanted to bring to you is we added a new appendix, which is why you're not seeing the next two slides in track changes, because it's all new language. So we worked with Allie Dorr Westbrook on the Caltrans team and her team to put this information together. Those of you who are familiar with the ATP guidelines, you know that there's guidance for plan projects. And so we thought it would be useful to also include guidance for non-infrastructure projects, because there are some, as with the plan, there are some additional exhibits that are required to be filled out to kind of give details on your non-infrastructure project. So this section kind of gives you a little bit of an overview for non-infrastructure projects, as well as links to the expenditure and cost guidance that Caltrans has put together, which basically we hope that you use to develop the scope for your non-infrastructure project. And then, so again, there's nothing new here in terms of policies or process. It's really just memorializing the current expectations. And those of you who have applied for non-infrastructure projects before are familiar with this. But this is really to help those who maybe have never applied or who are new to the program. So next slide. So this kind of continues with a brief overview of what you can expect to find in the non-infrastructure guidance document. So that you know what you can reference. And then there's a section here on that gives you links to the documents for requesting a scope change for your non-infrastructure project. And that's it. So any questions on this? Oh, Allie, go ahead. If you're talking, we can't hear you.
I was talking. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thanks. I forgot I muted myself. We had some background noise in the office. But anyways, I just wanted to, thank you for pointing this out. As Anya mentioned, we do have existing guidance that can and should be used when putting together your scope of work for your non-infrastructure project. Our team is making some minor improvements to this guide. We noticed some of the costs associated with a few items like purchasing of helmets and bikes and stuff was a bit low. So we do plan to make some increases there. And so just wanted to bring that to light to folks that overall the guidance will look very similar to what you saw in cycle 6 and cycle 7, but we do intend to make some increases. So just make sure that you're when you're putting together your project that you're using the most recent version. We'll definitely advertise via the ATRC newsletter and also post on the Caltrans and CTC ATP pages when our updates are complete. But just wanted to make folks aware of that because, we know costs have changed over the past few years, and we want to make sure you can still deliver the work that you want to do.
Thank you, Allie.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions or comments on this?
Not seeing any other hands raised or questions come in.
Okay, great. Well, believe it or not, that concludes all of the updates that are being proposed for the 2027 Active Transportation Program guidelines. So now you know all of them. As I said, on this Friday, January 16th, we will be posting the materials for the January commission meeting, and it will include the presentation item along with the draft guidelines attached. So you'll be able to view everything together there on Friday. And yeah, we hope you're able to take a look at it. If you have further concerns or questions on any of it, I welcome you to get in touch with us and let us know. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Alika to walk you through the application.
Thanks, Anya. So I wanted to finish up our discussion on the ATP applications. So Jaden, if you could please go to the next slide. Okay, great, thank you. So with the overall goals of the application for cycle 8, we wanted to ensure that the application aligns with all of the changes that we've made to the guidelines. And so as we previously discussed at the December 10th workshop, we are adding a new unscored question to Part A4, and this is where applicants are asked to outline their proposed improvements. And this new question is added to capture the new legislation on the Class 3 bike routes and sharrows. And we'll be continuing to remove outdated or unnecessary information as well from the guidelines, or excuse me, from the application. So one example of that is removing the 2 federal tools that are no longer available as part of the disadvantaged community question. And so you'll also see we're really focusing on aligning the application with the scoring rubrics. So we want to ensure that the information that's provided in those rubrics is also mirrored in the application. We did a lot of this going into cycle 7, and so this is just continuing that effort. You'll also see clarified language. At the December 10th workshop, we kind of talked through some of those examples and what that will look like going into cycle 8. And so again, you'll continue to see that in today's presentation. I wanted to provide just a bit of background. So through the site visits and the application debriefs that we've held over the cycles, we've made note of areas where there have been a good amount of applicants that are missing parts of questions or prompts, or they're not completely addressing the question as intended. And so for this reason, we're providing more context, or we're reformatting the questions just to make them a bit more clear. And most of the additions to the questions, as I mentioned previously, are pulled directly from the scoring rubrics. So as part of today's discussion, we'll be talking about Part A of the application, which is the general project details. This is where you're outlining, your project title, the schedule, the funding, all of that type of information. And so we'll be focusing on Part A for all of the applications, as well as wrapping up the discussion on the non-infrastructure only application and the plan application. So you'll see as I go through the slides on the narrative questions, which is Part B, that we're continuing to add more inclusive language so that all active transportation users, such as wheelchair users or people with visual impairments, will be captured in the narrative responses. We just want to ensure that our applicants are thinking about all users. And so just for some background on that, this was feedback that we received directly from our Interagency Equity Advisory Committee. So a lot of that was reflected in the infrastructure applications that we went over at the December 10th workshop. And just as a reminder for everyone, that workshop presentation, as well as the recording, is available on our website. So you'll be able to clearly see the existing language that was in the Cycle 7 application, and then the minor adjustments and edits that we made going into cycle 8. So Jaden, if you could please advance to the next slide. Okay, so this is the breakdown of points for each of the applications. I just wanted to start off with this to ensure to all of our applicants and stakeholders that nothing is changing. The score distribution is remaining exactly the same. And yeah, we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so Part A, general application questions. Next slide, please. Okay, so again, this is in all of the infrastructure and combination application types. So that includes the large, medium, and small. This question that has been added will not be scored. This is only informative for commission staff to ensure that we are following new legislation. So under the bicycle improvement section, if you are adding bicycle improvements to your project, you'll select that checkbox. And then one of the questions that will pop up is, does the proposed bicycle improvement or improvements include Class 3 bike routes or sharrows? So I wanted to showcase different scenarios and the types of questions that will populate based on your selection. So I kind of broke this out into 2 slides so that everyone gets a good visual of what it's going to look like in the application. So if you select yes to that first question, the next question that will pop up asks, what is the posted speed limit on the highway the Class 3 bikeway or sharrow is proposed? So you have 2 options here. If you select 25 miles per hour or lower, you'll have the next question populate. If you select greater than 25 miles per hour, a different question will populate. So in this example, if you select 25 miles per hour or lower, the next question that populates asks to describe how the use of the Class 3 bikeway or sharrows is appropriate for the local community context and advances a lower stress environment or low stress network. So all of these questions will be required if you select yes on that first one. If you select no, then none of these following questions will populate. You'll just advance to the next part of the application. And so let's look at the scenario if you select greater than 25 miles per hour. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in the event that your proposed Class 3 bikeway or sharrow falls on a street with a speed limit of greater than 25 miles per hour, you'll first be asked to describe how the project will implement improvements to reduce the design speed limit to 25 miles per hour or less. And then once you respond to that question, you'll then be asked to respond to the same exact question as the previous slide. Describe how the use of the Class 3 bikeway or sharrows is appropriate for the local community context and advances a lower stress environment or low stress network. So all of this language was not verbatim, but essentially pulled directly from statute. So these are the requirements that we are by law required to meet. So I will take a pause here to see if there are any questions or comments.
Hey, Alika, not seeing any hand raised or questions in the chat.
Thank you, Jaden. Great. So we can move on to the next slide. Okay. So one of the pieces of feedback that we got from our applicants as well as our volunteer evaluators is that the application was very lengthy, specifically in submittable because you don't have the capability to collapse sections. It's all scroll. And unfortunately, with the way that the platform is laid out to meet accessibility requirements, we don't have the capacity to shorten the application in regards to like collapsing sections. And I know that that was consistent feedback we received from a lot of folks. And so what we decided to do internally was work with Caltrans and find other ways that we could shorten the application. And so one of those instances was to remove any sort of redundant type of information. So across all of the application types, meaning the infrastructure, combination, non-infrastructure, and plan applications, we will be deleting the project schedule section. So this entire section will be deleted. And the reason we decide to move forward with this is because all of this information is requested in the project programming request, or the PPR. And this information is kind of scattered through the project milestone and the project funding tables required in the PPR. So to make the application shorter and to make things easier for our applicants, we are consolidating and shortening the application in that way. Anya, I saw you came on camera.
Before you move on to the next slide, we did get a comment on the previous section, so I just wanted to read that out before you move on. That's all.
Sure.
Okay. So we got a comment from Deb Redmond. Wonderful suggestion and reminder from the advocates, but please keep in mind the word and character limits imposed on us. And if you want specific, discrete responses to all possible users, rather than us providing you with accessibility information that naturally applies to all walk roll modes, including wheelchairs, walkers, strollers, bicycles, tricycles, etc., etc. Please consider expanding word limits in any case.
Thank you. That's really helpful, Deborah. So I know for some of the sections we did increase the word count. So what I can do is go through the application and add happy birthday. So I will absolutely do this as a birthday gift. We can add some additional word limits for all of the questions where we're calling out everyone to consider all active transportation users. So I can absolutely do that. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, and happy birthday. Okay, I'm just making note of that.
We did get one
Thank
more
you.
comment.
Sure.
So Shauna writes, the milestone section does provide a concise section where the applicant can demonstrate their understanding of the process.
Okay, thank you,
Shauna.
Shauna.
Yeah, do you mean the milestone section in the PPR? I assume. Okay. I didn't see a oh, she's referencing the section proposed for elimination on this slide that we're on currently.
Okay, so it might be easier to have you come off mute. I just want to make sure I'm understanding your comment. Give me one sec. Okay.
Thank
So are
you.
you talking about the application itself or within the PPR?
So if it's in the PPR, that's if that's the section that's being eliminated, and I may have misunderstood. I remember in previous applications that there was a section that looked very much like this in the application itself. If that remains, then that's great. If you're only proposing eliminating this portion from the PPR, but as a person who has been an evaluator, I think that being able to demonstrate that they understand the delivery process and how long that some of the phases can take is an important part of the application. And I think it's easier for the evaluators to see that demonstration in the concise table.
Mhm.
But
That's-
if you're saying that it's in another location, then I withdraw my comment.
Thank you. That's helpful. So we're not proposing to remove anything from the PPR itself. We're just proposing to remove within the application. It basically was prompting applicants to call out the start and end of each phase and to account for how many months each phase was going to take. And so working with Caltrans, we determined that that information is essentially reflected exactly the same in the PPR. And as part of the evaluation training, we make it really clear, as I'm sure you remember, to the evaluators that they are to look at the PPR. And it's going to be included under the next section of Part A. So I hope that addresses your question or your comment.
I think it does. You're saying that it's going to continue to live in an application. It just is not going to live in two
Correct.
places. Yeah, that's fine.
That's
I think
correct.
that's great. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to just add to that, what Alika is proposing is not going to be taking away information. It's really where it was duplicated, where applicants had to produce the same information more than once. And, some of you who've been with the program a long time will remember that we've always had the PDF application. And so last cycle, and cycle 7 was the first cycle we used Submittable, and we really kind of didn't have a whole lot of time to work through a lot of these items that Alika is able to address now, because we were just trying to put everything over into Submittable. And a lot of the information that was duplicative in the PDF was because if you filled it out in one place, it automatically populated it in another place. And that's not how Submittable is set up. And so we're just trying to adapt the application now to this new platform. And that's part of what some of these changes are. And that's probably more information than a lot of you need, but I just wanted to provide that context. Okay.
No, that's thank you for mentioning that.
So we have a few more questions. So the first one is from Nicole. Will the question that won't be scored also count against the total word count? And I think, yeah, you know which one.
Yeah, I can take that. So, Nicole, that's a good question. No, this won't count towards like the total word count or anything like that. This will be totally separate from the section of the application that evaluators are looking and scoring on. So we made sure to make that very clear. It's separated. And the way the application, the ATP application is structured, there's not like a total word count within the application that you are required to stay under. With every question and every short answer or long answer field, there's a specific amount of word count that is limited to each of those subsections. So this will be totally different, and it will have its own assigned word count.
Okay, the next question is from Meg. Apologies if this was covered in previous webinars and my question is not focused on our current discussion, but can you speak to the total funding available for round 8 and what a realistic cap on funding requests will be? If this is not appropriate for this meeting, happy to send an email. Yeah, we can touch on this quickly. So the ATP does not have a funding or a request cap. So that's just going to be up to the applicant to request, whatever they need to request for their project. And then I will get the amount available for cycle 8 in a minute. So along with our draft guidelines that will be presented at the January Commission meeting, we will also have the draft ATP fund estimate. So the fund estimate, of course, says will determine the final amount available for the ATP. However, at this point, what we're expecting is about $576 million for cycle 8. And that is, of course, for 4 years of programming. Okay. And then Summer Lopez says, I appreciate this, Alika. I think it also ensures that evaluators are reviewing the PPRs and cuts back work on the application. Rachel Ohm says, appreciate the thoughtful effort to reduce redundancies in the application, as our region has heard feedback regarding the challenge of how lengthy the application is. And then we do have a raised hand. Oh, we did have a question about a break. And we were not planning on a break. So I hope everyone just takes a break as needed. We did have a raised hand from Shelley. Okay.
Hi, good morning. Shelley Kwan from LA Metro. I have a comment on the project schedule section. I also appreciate the effort to reduce redundancies, and I think this helps avoid situations where information might be inconsistent between two sections. I do think that there might need to be some guidance with the PPR to help people build in time for those allocations and those notice to proceeds with federal work, which were part of section A5.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
That's helpful feedback. Teresa, or maybe someone else from the engineering team, is this something that's covered in the PSR equivalency workshop, or is there something that's offered or any sort of guidance that can be provided to applicants? You may have lost Teresa. Oh, there's Cirillo. Cirillo, go ahead.
Can you hear me, Alika?
Yes. Oh, we lost you there, Cirillo. Heard you for a second.
Can you hear me okay, Alika?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, so we covered a little bit of it in the PSR equivalency, but I can definitely talk with the PMs and see if there's something that we can add as far as instructions, because it does bring up a good point, because with federal, maybe some additional timeline that they need to look out for between phases, right, to consider. And also with the, if it is a certain amount, above 10 million construction costs, we might have to look into also those elements.
Okay, it got a little muffled there, but it sounds like we did talk about it a bit during the PSR equivalency workshop, but we can also follow up with more support for our applicants. So Shelley, you raise a really good point. Thank you for bringing this up. I made note of it. So what we'll do is we'll talk internally and work with our Caltrans partners. And then maybe what we can do is at our last workshop, when we're talking about the scoring rubrics, we can circle back and just let everyone know of the support or any sort of resources that will help with that section of the PPR. Okay, great. Thank you all for the feedback. This was really helpful. Okay, looks like we have a comment from Nicole saying, as a district staff, I can say that one thing that does cause deliverability issues for a project is situations when an application goes through where planning staff fills out the application, but then engineering staff has to deliver it. And planning staff is fully aware of the various milestones to deliver the project. One potential solution would be to include some information in the instructions rather than the form, or have a section where they have to check off that it was considered or something like that. That's helpful, Nicole, thank you. I'll make note of this and we can talk internally about ways to provide that guidance. Okay. All right. Not seeing any other questions or hands raised. Jaden, could you please go to the next slide? Thank you. Okay, so continuing the effort of reducing redundancies and shortening the length of the application, from Part A6, which is the project funding, again, applicable to all of the application types, we'll be removing the funding table. Again, this information is already requested as part of the PPR. And so under this section, the only fields that will be remaining are the total project cost, your ATP request, the ATP funding request type. So if you believe that your project should receive state-only funds, this is where you would identify that and provide an explanation as to why. And then you would attach your PPR. So this section is significantly shorter and, again, reducing redundancies. So I'll take a pause here to see if there's any feedback from stakeholders on this. Okay, not seeing any hands raised or comments. Excuse me. Okay, Jaden, let's move to the next slide. Okay, so those are all the updates that we're making to Part A of the application. Again, that section is just your general project information. No part of that is scored. So now we're going to move on to Part B. This is the narrative questions section, and this is the part where application questions are scored. We can advance to the next slide. So I'm going to start going through just the minor tweaks that we've made to the non-infrastructure application, and then I'll close out with the plan application. I will say in general, I'll probably get through these slides rather quickly because the edits are very minor, just providing clarification and then adding more specifics in the application itself to ensure that the applicants are responding to every part of the question that's called out in the scoring rubric. So for the non-infrastructure application, under question 2, which is the potential to increase walking and biking, under Part B, the question currently asks, describe the program, the population it will serve, and how the program will use non-infrastructure components, an example, encouragement and education, to address each of the needs identified above with the goal of increasing walking and or biking to community identified destinations within the program area. So the only thing that we're proposing, you'll see included in track changes here, is we're just adding to this question. So it'll read as, describe the program, the population it will serve, and how the program will use non-infrastructure components to address each of the needs identified above with the goal of increasing walking and biking and inducing mode shift to community identified destinations within the program area. Specific destinations must be identified. So, and as Deborah had requested as a birthday gift, I'll make sure to increase the word count. So maybe we can take a pause here. My initial thought is to increase it maybe by 50 to 100 words. Are there any suggestions that differ from that? Is there a preference from the group? And then I'll make sure to make those adjustments in the infrastructure combination applications as well.
Seeing any raised hands or comments on your question specifically right now, we'll wait to have people chime in on that. So there were a couple comments that came in while you were talking. So Jeannie LePage says, so appreciate all of the simplification of Part A. Thank you for the great work. And then Claire says, could you post the draft application to CTC or Caltrans website with these edits shown so we could see how all these changes look together?
Yeah, sure. Would the group like those in track changes? Would that make things easier?
It sounds like that's perhaps the request, and maybe we can post it with the workshop materials, Alika. We can post a track changes version. Oh, Claire says that would be great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I already have those written out. I know Beverly last cycle made Word document versions of all of the applications. So what I'll do is I'll make sure to update those across all application types, and we can have those posted on the website.
Okay, great. So we got a couple of responses to your word count question. 100 additional words, and then a comment from Candace saying 50 words isn't much. So that sounds to me like 100 words is perhaps the supported. We did get another comment from another attendee. Would the word count increase be applied to all narrative questions?
That's a good question. So, Angel, what we'll do is for all of the questions where we're adding more context specific to all active transportation users, I can go through and add I can add 100 words in addition to what is already set as the limit across all of the applications. So it won't just be for the non-infrastructure that we're talking about. It'll be for the infrastructure combination applications, the non-infrastructure only in the plan. Yeah, no problem. Okay, great. So we'll update that to 100 words. And then, let me make note that we'll post track changes of the app. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you, Jaden. Okay, so I kind of touched on this a little bit, but I want to, in case someone missed our last workshop, within the application, there's a question footnote section, which is like grayed out text, but it just provides more details on the requirements of what needs to be responded as part of the question. And I included an image here on the right, so you all can see kind of what that looks like when I'm referencing the question footnotes. So for this question in the non-infrastructure application, I just added in the footnotes more prompts for applicants to talk about students because that is something that is scored on and it's called out specifically in the scoring rubrics. However, it wasn't clearly identified in the application. So under Part A, I'm adding, how will students of all ages, including but not limited to K through 12 and college university, use and have access to the project? Discussion of students is not limited to Safe Routes to School projects. And you'll see an example of that in the image on the right. And then part B, I'll be adding, will the project increase the proportion of student trips accomplished by active transportation? Again, discussion of students is not limited to Safe Routes to School projects. So this is something, as I mentioned when I first started talking through the application, we noticed a lot of applicants are kind of missing these easy points. It's 2 points under section A and 1 point under part B. So it's 3 potential points. So if you're not talking about students, or you think that the discussion of students is only limited to Safe Routes to School projects, you could be missing those 3 points that could really make a difference. So we're calling this out in the question footnotes to ensure that everyone gets those points. Okay, any questions or comments on question 2? Okay, great. Jaden, can we move to the next slide, please? Oh, actually, we did get one from Rachel. For the combination infrastructure and non-infrastructure application, could you add a note in the NI component that the NI component needs to be discussed when responding to all questions, where the rubric asks for infrastructure and NI elements? Yes, Rachel, that's a great comment. We actually received that feedback, I believe it was in cycle 6. And so Beverly worked really closely with Jonathan Matz from Safe Routes to School Partnership, and they built out a separate application. So if in Submittable you are looking to apply for a large application, you have the option to select infrastructure only or combination. And so the combination application will call out prompts that are specific to the non-infrastructure. I see you have your hand raised, so let me know if I misinterpreted your question.
I would say partially, and I was just trying to type really quickly as you were moving along, so I kind of missed a little bit of what I was trying to get to. But I know we're talking about the application portion, and I was definitely appreciating, was involved with that conversation about having the specific combination application. But since now the kind of update for Submittable is to include the little like prompts, I just wanted to note, like, I think the application does mention it, but anywhere where we could just put that line of like also include the non-infrastructure portion, I think that would be helpful. Although it is, on the applicant to be thorough, but as an evaluator, when I was scoring, it became a challenge for the combination projects where the applicant did a really good job of responding, but only focusing on the infrastructure component. And so then, and I know we're not talking about the scoring rubric today, but then when scoring, I felt really conflicted of like, okay, they did this great job of responding and talking about the infrastructure component, but they didn't mention non-infrastructure here. So then I was like, I'm not sure. It was a challenge to determine how to score in a way that felt fair, because the scoring rubric was pretty black and white of like, if you didn't include, like technically, if you didn't include also the non-infrastructure component, you should technically, it's by the rubric, it looks like you should get no points. So just the little prompts here and there. Again, it's on the applicant, but I think since we're adding these notes, just wanted to plug that.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think that's really helpful feedback, especially because, you're an applicant, but also you've been on the evaluator side as well. So what I can do is I'll just, those fields are required, those specific NI prompts, but what I'll do is I'll provide maybe more context in the question footnotes, and I'll pull directly from the scoring rubric. So nothing new will be required as part of the question. I'll just provide more clarification and context for the applicant. Thank you. Okay, Jaden, sorry, we can move forward. Okay, so in the non-infrastructure application, we're going to talk about question 3, which is the safety question. The existing language states referencing the heat maps, collision maps, and collision summaries provided in above. Discuss why your agency chose this program area as a priority for addressing ongoing safety, and discuss how the program corresponds to the types and locations of the past collisions. So the only thing that we added was to consider threats to vulnerable and underserved communities, including disadvantaged communities, if applicable, meaning if your project did qualify as a disadvantaged community under question 1. Children, students, older adults, and persons with disabilities in your response. And as we discussed earlier, we will be increasing the word count by 100 on this question. Take a pause here to see if we have any feedback. Okay. Not seeing anything come in. We can advance to the next slide. Okay, and then to this question, footnote, I wanted to provide more context on the influence area guidance. This is pulled verbatim from the scoring rubric, and this was added to the infrastructure and combination applications as well. So just providing more guidance, a project's expected safety influence area, which is where a project has the potential to mitigate, must be reasonable. The project's influence area, as defined by the applicant and shown in the output documents, must be consistent with the project maps and plans attached to the application. So just providing that clarification. Through the application debriefs, we noticed that a lot of applicants were worried about expanding their influence area, even though it absolutely made sense for them to do so to capture an example of, collisions that were on an alternate route. So they would be providing users a safer alternative with their proposed project. So in cases like that, we wanted to just discuss the influence area guide and provide clarification on that within the application itself. Any questions or comments? Okay, not seeing any. Jaden, could we advance to the next slide, please? Okay, so this is my only update to the plan application. This is question 2 in that application, and this is the priority to fund the development of community-wide active transportation plans. So under Part B, the existing language states, describe the active transportation problems or deficiencies within the plan area, include the community's active transportation needs, and why this plan is necessary to meet those needs. So the only thing that we're adding is consider children, older adults, students, working professionals, and persons with disabilities. The word count here will also be increased. And then to the question footnote, I'm just calling out, address the needs of students in the community and how their needs will be addressed. Discussion of students is not limited to Safe Route to School plans. So very consistent with all the other edits that we've seen across the other applications. So I'll take a pause here to see if there are any questions or comments.
I'm not seeing any questions coming in. Maybe we'll give it another minute in case someone's typing. Okay, yeah, I'm not seeing any raised hands or questions.
Great. All right. Well, thank you all for your feedback. This was extremely helpful. We'll take everything that you guys provided us and make those edits going into the Cycle A applications. if there is anything that comes to mind from now until our next workshop in February, you can email me and I'm happy to discuss it further, and we'll just make sure to bring it back to the entire stakeholder group before we make any decisions. So thank you all for your input.
Okay, so we can move on to the next slide, which is our recap and action items, which Jaden will present. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Anya, and thanks everyone for the comments and discussion today. I have a few items listed here under action items. One of the things I have noted is to clarify the language pertaining construction completion and the guidelines. I have another note that says we'll expand the word count for application questions that have added language pertaining folks utilizing wheelchairs, people with visual impairments, and it seems like our consensus was about 100 words. I have a note that we will post a track changes version of the application alongside the workshop materials. I do have another note here that says provide more clarification regarding the non-infrastructure component and the prompts for applicants. And then lastly, I have consider raising the small infrastructure cap for cycle 9. And then team, let me know if I may have missed anything.
Let's see. So we were gonna add a link to the count guide to this PowerPoint before we post it. And then we wanted, this is just for the future. This isn't anything that's limited to cycle 8, but just having further discussions of the 5-year counts post-construction. So that's something internal that we'll be working on. And then following up with the Caltrans team for guidance on the PPR, specifically on the notice to proceed or any sort of like federal timelines that need to be identified in the application.
Julika, any additional notes on your end, Anya?
Julika covered it.
Okay, great. Okay, I will move on to the next slide. So next steps, our last ATP Cycle 8 Central Workshop will be held virtually on February 5th, 2026 from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., where we'll primarily be covering the ATP scoring rubrics. The registration link will be included in this presentation, and it's already posted online to our CTC website. So you can go ahead now and sign up for that, get that on your calendar. And again, that is our final Central Workshop. Appreciate you all for attending today. Our contact information is on this slide here, and I'll turn it back over to Anya if you have any closing remarks or additional comments at this time.
Thank you, Jaden. Yeah, so I just want to echo the thanks to everyone. This is our last workshop in terms of any input for substantive changes on the guidelines and application. As Jaden mentioned, the February workshop will be our last workshop, and we will only be talking about the scoring rubrics and updates that we're making, which will either just be clarifying or adding items to coincide with any updates to the application that has been presented in the workshop so far. So thank you all for your time and for attending our workshop series. And we hope to see some of you at our branch workshops. And, you know, keep scheduling those site visits with us. We're still accepting requests for site visits. So we hope you take advantage of that. We're happy to make the time to meet with you, and it's really really fun for us to kind of get a preview of your projects. So yeah, so that's it. With that, we will close out this workshop. We'll stay on a couple minutes, like 5-10 minutes. If anybody has questions they want to ask, you know, if we were in person, maybe you'd come up to us afterwards to ask some questions. So we'll just stick around for that. But with that, we will end our workshop. Thank you.